All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, this weekend was a great meeting of the minds of the GOP elite of America. And it wasn't Davos, it wasn't Raytheon, it was a donor retreat down at Mar-a-Lago. Trump's new residence down in Florida, the new center of the Republican Party, where pretty much every prospective GOP candidate has to do a pilgrimage to if they want Trump's blessing for their candidacy. One candidate, Josh Mandel of Ohio, wanted to get in so badly, he actually snuck in and was escorted off the premises. But that's neither here nor there. The signature part of the event was Trump's address to the group, which his advisors built up in the media as some sort of seminal address in which Trump would truly declare that not only was he personally in charge of the Republican Party, but that his policy legacy was the only way forward. Snippets of that speech were strategically leaked to the media hours before it took place, where Fox wrote, quote, he was expected to say that if Republicans stick to an America First agenda, the GOP will win back Congress in 2022 and take back the White House in 2024. Trump was set to describe the GOP winning agenda of 2022 as this: cancel culture, guns, and a record-breaking surge of migrants at the southern border. Now, the latter actually does have some political juice, and that's a whole other monologue to be written, but whether this is all a working-class GOP agenda. But what happened in reality is eminently more funny to me than that. A great preview of what 2022 for the GOP will really be about. Instead of sticking to his prepared text, Trump instead went on several tangents and tirades, which ended up being the only thing that he actually talked about. Those included saying the election was, quote, rigged and bullshit, an apparently animated discussion of each state's individual voting systems, talking about Oprah and Barack Obama. On McConnell, he ripped into him for not moving to decertify Biden's electoral college victory, and he had this to say, quote, if that were Schumer instead of this dumb son of a bitch McConnell, they would have never allowed it to happen. Now, leaving aside how amusing this all is, it is instructive. There's no Trumpism. There's a dude down in Mar-a-Lago who will go scorched earth on you if you say the truth that the 2020 election was not stolen. Is Mitch McConnell a dumb SOB? Yeah, but not because he voted to certify the election, but because he didn't pass $2,000 checks before the election, or allowed Georgia to go down in flames for the same reason. And he's been making sure he stands right in front of the most popular legislation in modern American memory. Is his wife deeply corrupted by the Chinese Communist Party? Almost certainly. And yet, Trump's beef is that she or he didn't thank him personally for her patronage job in his cabinet. And the best part is, for a lot of the people who actually attended the speech, Trump didn't even get into any of the policy agenda on what the Republicans should run on in 2022. You may think this is just the harmless musings of an ex-president, but you all know the truth. Trump is the most popular Republican in the country. And not just that, he's got the money to back up his musings. Trump has more money in the bank than the entire RNC. His endorsement is literally make or break in any competitive primary. What does that speech tell you? No matter how many times his advisors try to leak out how a speech is going to be a defining moment, there's only one thing that he really cares about, and that is loyalty to himself. That's all MAGA means. It's all it's meant for a long time. The definitive evidence was most stark when Trump made sure that Tommy Tuberville of Alabama prevailed over Jeff Sessions, despite the fact that Sessions was MAGA way before Donald Trump ever was. And I have zero doubt that any of this analysis will change people's minds. A lot of people just really like Trump because he drives liberals crazy. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. Even I myself find it deeply gratifying every once in a while. But to them, I would ask this question. Is Donald Trump the political vessel to defend against cancel culture? Do you live in a more censorious country after his reign or not? Are you more likely to stop liberal efforts to take guns with him at the helm of your movement or not? On immigration, are you more or less likely to invite mass immigration with him at the helm of your movement? We actually have answers to all of these questions. We do live in a more censorious country. Trump, more than anyone, actually radicalized the liberal intelligentsia, so much so that court packing and gun confiscation is actually an article of faith now amongst the Democratic base. And Trump was so inept, not only did he fail to change any laws around immigration, he also, for the first time, influenced Americans to say they supported it at a net positive rate for the first time in modern American history. Trump was not only a failure as president, he's a terrible political leader, even if you agree with his stated aims of policy. And I don't expect anything to be done about it. No GOP politician has the same level of juice with the base because they're mostly corporate sellouts and people can see that quite clearly. But I can say good luck to some of my Republican friends because you're going to need it. This is basically all you're going to be dealing with for years to come. It's funny, Crystal, like looking at that speech, it is the same thing every time that he's basically spoken. They leak out, they're like, he's going to declare himself leader of the Republican Party. First of all, if you're a king, you must say he's king is not the real king. But second is this. You are not going to actually make any policy case. It was all just like the election was stolen, McConnell is a dumb son of a bitch, etc. I mean, I agree, but, not for the same reasons. And that's the biggest problem that they have. McConnell and them have no credibility with their base. So the base is basically, they're all in on Trump and the culture war alone. Now, people are doing like lame attempts to try and be like Trumpist or whatever in their primaries, Josh Mandel being a key example of that. None of them, people can see through their like phoniness. But all of this comes at a deep cost to electoral benefit. I was reading a piece in the AP about Biden Republicans, and this is a real thing. I mean, we're talking about maybe 10 to 15% of the former GOP, people who voted that way for 40 years. And it's exactly as I predicted. They're like, I just can't stand Trump, number one. And Biden seems to be doing a pretty good job on the vaccine rollout, right? These are upper middle class white people who voted for Mitt Romney, voted for George W. Bush, voted for John McCain, like nominally Christian, whatever in some way. And they're like, look, I just can't stand Trump. I'm not going to go along with this stuff. And the more that you do Stop the Steal, you are going to accelerate that movement. That is tens of millions of people in key states like Arizona and in Georgia, in Wisconsin, and so much more. It's why he lost the presidency.
Yeah, I mean, it says everything that, like, the first time he ran successfully for president, big key part of his pitch was on trade and jobs, bringing jobs back to America. And now it's on cancel culture. Right. And I mean, I'm
actually anti-cancel culture.
I mean, exactly. First of all, I'm anti the term cancel culture because it's just so freaking annoying. But some of the key critiques, I actually agree with.
Totally.
But the idea that that's going to be like the center of your movement and galvanize regular people in your cause is silly. Compare that to the potency of something like trade, something like offshoring and outsourcing, and there's just absolutely no comparison there whatsoever. I also love how you point out, like, he'll hate the right people, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Like Mitch McConnell is a perfect example. Like, there are a million great reasons to hate Mitch McConnell. I could give you like 50 of them just off the top of my head. And yet he picks the one thing, like the one thing that McConnell did that I was like, okay, you actually kind of did the right thing there.
It's like semi-honorable.
Right, right. That's the one thing he picks to hate him for. The whole thing just amounts to absolutely nothing. And so, yeah, even if he had gone through his list of like, here are the issues that Republicans should run on, it's not a particularly strong case. I think you're right. Immigration of those issues is the one that's the most potent. I was just looking while you were talking about on Real Clear Politics that Biden approval and in different areas, like his approval on the economy, his approval on foreign affairs, place where he's weakest is definitely an approval on immigration.
Yep.
But I also am of the view that especially in a time when the economy is improving and things are getting better, that just doesn't pack as much punch as when people feel like they're backsliding, they're worried about the future. Right now, the right track, wrong track numbers for the country, wrong track is still winning, but it has narrowed to the smallest point that it's been at since, like, you have to go back to 2012 to find numbers that were even similar to, to how well the right track is starting to do. It's right track 41%, wrong track 52%, which again is just a tremendous improvement over where we've been for the past couple of years. So if you don't have an answer to those just like basic things that are governing people's lives, you're going to be kind of adrift.
No, they've got a big problem. And look, the problem they always have is that the increasingly Republican base is just completely disconnected from the rest of the country. And Stop the Steal was actually the final like version of that, where it's like a literal just complete bullshit claim, which then takes over, I don't know, maybe like 35 something % of the population. And the rest, 65, is like, no way. Just because it's so completely removed from reality. That's a huge problem because you can't deviate from that or you're going to lose the majority of the people who vote in your primary and who are animated and give you money. But you also can't get other people to vote for you. So what are you going to do? And that is really, I just see it as the final nail in the coffin. I said this last week, but like policies and agendas which are built upon lies, it never works out. It always will come back to bite you. And I think that is ultimately what Trump is basically forcing upon the entire Republican Party. They keep trying to play footsie with it. They keep thinking that, oh, well, if I just say this part and then talk about something else, it's like, number one, the people who believe the election can stolen, they can see through you. They'll say you're full of shit. You don't actually believe this. And then the people who are animated by those concerns but don't believe the election was stolen are like, I don't want anything to do with you. You think the election was stolen. So you basically have made it irreconcilable. And until that, it's just going to be a big problem.
Yeah, they just have to bank on their structural advantages. That's all they got going for them at this point.
Yeah, well, how did that work out? Go take a look at the U.S. Senate. All right.
Next up, our panel, Chuck Rocha and Phil Wegman when Rising continues.